G'day everyone, how are we going? So, I've got some spade connectors, got a 30 amp relay, and oh shit, okay that's broken, and a wire thick enough to probably kill a small elephant. But what we're going to be doing, that should be alright, what we're going to be doing is dropping the fuel tank again. So, if you look back to my very first video, I sort of hastily put together a video on fitting a Walbro 255 in my fuel tank. Now, when I did that, I plugged it into the factory harness or the factory loom, and that is supposedly a 15 amp harness. It's got a 15 amp fuse in line with it, but the wires are only pretty small. If I had to guess, I'd say they were about 4 or 5 millimeter wire. I believe it's only 10 amp wire. It might be 15 amp, but the thing is, it's stretched all the way from here, following the loom, all the way back across through the ECU and all of that, and up to here. So overall, it's a long length of wire, and it's got a lot of twists and turns, and it is only small 15 amp wire. Now, when you increase the length of wire, the resistance in turn increases, and if you have a higher resistance at the same voltage, you can only draw a smaller amount of current because V equals IR, as all us electric nerds know. Now what I've got here is some thick 8 gauge wire. Now when you have a thicker gauge wire, your resistance is lowered because there's less difficulty for the flow of electrons through the wire, if that makes sense. So what I will be doing is running straight from the battery this thick wire. It's going to run the shortest path possible back to where the fuel tank is, and then on top of the fuel tank I'm going to have the relay click open when the factory loom gets the power, and that will in turn run power straight from the battery to the fuel pump. So now, enough talking. It's a bit of a pain to drop the fuel tank, and I've also got a little plan that while I'm in there, I'm going to remove everything from my back seats and cut a window in the bottom of the body, because with the dual cabs there's no hole, or you can't get to the fuel pump easily. You've got to drop the fuel tank, which is a huge pain. I'll see if I'm going to film this. I don't really think I will. It's more of a pain more than anything else. I think it's like 4 bolts here, another 2 bolts here, and then you've got to make sure you undo the bolts for the fuel filler neck. But anyway, enough talk, let's get this done because it's getting a little late in Friday Arvo. So I am probably going to have to jack the car up, but there's this guard here, 2 bolts, but one's loose. That was probably me last time. And I'm seeing 3 bolts up back here. Oh. There's a drain plug in case you need to drain it, but I'm not going to bother. And there's 4 bolts along the back up there. So I'm going to jack the car up off the diff, put some jack stands under the diff so I have a bit more height to work with. One of the beauty things about working on the Hilux, depending on what you're doing of course, is that you can actually drain the oil and do a full service without even jacking the car up, which is pretty sweet. Alrighty, so just had to go for a small restroom stop, but it's time 6:47 and the tank's already out. That was a bit easier than last time because I knew exactly what I was doing, but that being said, it was still a massive pain because I didn't have my trolley jack, which would have made it nicer to lower slower than I had to with my hands and knees, but it's out. Alright, the plan now, so if we look down here, this here is the factory positive wire. Now if I had to guess, it looks pretty thin. I'd say that's 15 amp wire. So going up to this 8 gauge wire, which is I believe rated for 40 amps if I had to guess off the top of my head. That's going to allow a much faster and less resistive current flow of electrons flow into my pump without all of the without all of the factory old Toyota 90s wiring that it has to normally run through. So I'll be using this harness here. This has the 12 volt which normally clicks the fuel pump on. I'm going to be running that to my relay, which will then click open a solid connection straight from the fuel pump in the tank all the way to the battery at the front of the car. What I'm also going to do while I'm here is clean out the back of my car, pull the seat out, and get ready for tomorrow morning when I'm going to angle grind a big window in the bottom of my cab, which will allow a quick access hole so I can get to and take off this fuel pump area if I need to. So when I put the pump in the tank here, what I didn't do was put a sock on it, because it was a longer pump, like sort of longer lengthways, pointing down to the bottom of the tank than the factory 3RZ pump, which means if you had a sock, like one of the filter elements on it, that would actually foul it at the bottom and it wouldn't be able to be bolted down completely. So I'm hoping that the actual reason that the fuel pressure was dropping wasn't because it's jammed up with shit and rust and dirt because it doesn't have a sock on it. I am hoping that it's just not being able to draw enough current, but we'll see. So I've got the fuel pump out now, and if we look closely, the earth wire, it's I soldered that together originally and had some heat shrink around it, and lo and behold, because it's submerged in petrol, a very corrosive hydrocarbon, it's just melted the heat shrink of it. But it hasn't done it on the positive side, which is a bit strange. But what I am going to be doing is deciding how I'm going to run my positive wire. So this looks like it's an actual isolated metal part, which then runs to this positive wire here, which runs to the positive of the fuel pump, and then the earth runs straight from the connection there to here. So I'll fool around and see if I'll be able to actually run the new wire I have through here down into the fuel pump, but yeah, we'll see. So I've covered up the top of the fuel tank, and I've plugged up all of the holes that lead to it. So before you do any hot work, which, you know, hot work involving soldering or anything that has the potential of causing sparks, fire or an explosion, just leave your pump out overnight, probably just to let all the fuel evaporate. The fuel, or the petrol at least, is a light hydrocarbon molecule, so it'll evaporate pretty easily. Diesel on the other hand is much heavier and it has a lot of trouble evaporating. It needs to be a very dry climate for that to happen. But yeah, I'm going to leave mine out, and then tomorrow I'm going to sort out exactly how I want to do my relay. So I'm debating whether I run this big 6mm wire all the way into the tank and have a plug going from this to the one down there. I have this 30 amp relay with some 14 gauge wire, which is the max it'll do is about 30 amps I believe, or 25 technically. So I'm debating whether I go to the parts store tomorrow and grab a different bigger relay and some bigger connectors, because the spade connectors I had, they were only 6.5mm ones, and they technically, they had stamped on them they could only do 10 amps. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave it for tonight, come back at it tomorrow. I'm having a busy day tomorrow, so I might have to make it a morning mission to grab all the parts. As well as that, I'll probably cut out the floor in the morning because it's late now. Okay, so I've cracked off all of the sand deadening here, and this is probably about the size of the window I'm going to cut, because what would absolutely suck balls is cutting a window too small, not allowing you to get the whole fuel pump assembly out. But this will be plenty big enough for my needs. So yeah, probably about just where the edge of the vinyl is, about this size here. And if we come under the car, we got this down here. So the fuel pump itself sits around this sort of center section here, where this rib is short. I got a photo of it before I pulled the fuel tank out, just so I know. And I'm pretty confident that it sits just here. And you can see that the ribbing only extends from here to here. So I'm probably going to cut out about half of it. Don't actually know what the ribbing's for. I think it's just for a bit of rigidity in the body if it ever gets thumped. And what I'm going to do to mitigate a fire hazard is where the fuel lines are, I'm going to put my welding glove just over the ends of them like so, just to stop the chance of any sparks shooting back. And what I'm also going to do is have a hose and a bucket of water ready just in case. There we go, just like so. So what I'm going to do for cutting the holes out is I'm going to come in from the top, because the angle grinder spins this way. I'm going to cut these two slots along this way, and that way the sparks will shoot out this way, which will hopefully make the smallest amount of chance for a fire hazard. But then I'm going to go under the car to do the horizontals, because if I did that in here I'd either be facing this way or that way, which would shoot sparks around the cabin, which is not what I want. Yeah, so I've got a tarpaulin up. I've removed as much flammable stuff as I can, and yeah, let's hope I don't burn this car down. Okay, so I've cleaned up the edges with the file. And what I've done now is I've cut some tubing, I don't know if you can see that, down one side, and I'm slipping it over the raw edges that I have dressed up and filed to create a sort of barrier so that I will be able to seal the panel completely down once I make some holes to put some bolts through. And that should hopefully yeah, make a nice tight seal. And then I'll be able to service my fuel pump without dropping the freaking tank. Okay, so I've used my grinder and I've ground some bare metal spots on here, so that now when I sit it down in there, it still doesn't meet perfectly all the way around, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld some tabs that I've made up. I'm going to weld them onto the flat spots there, and then I'm going to use tech screws and and crush it down into the rubber that I've cut out, so that it'll hopefully make a reasonable seal around it. It won't be a perfect seal, but then again it'll be under the seat, and I'll cover it with some like insulation or something, just so not too much noise or rattles come up through the hole. That's awesome. It's quite strong. I enjoy. Okay, so I've just run my fuel hose underneath. It's got 2 hose clamps on the end there. This is 5/16 high pressure automotive fuel hose. You can see WP 12 bar, working pressure 12 bar. What I'm going to be doing now is putting the fuel tank back into position so that when I want to do my fuel pump stuff, I can sort of have the wires hanging around on top and not have to do it outside the car and then lift it all back up once I'm done. Fingers crossed I'll be able to deadlift this thing back up, because I had my COVID shot, my arm's a bit sore, but I reckon I should be able to do it. I've got my jack now actually, so I'll probably use that thing. Well, it's Monday afternoon now, and surprise, surprise, I managed to get the tank back in. The reason that I cut the hole in the floor is because I remember last time putting the tank back up was an absolute pain, and I vowed to myself that if I ever dropped the tank again, I would cut a massive hole in the floor. I'm delighted to say it has worked perfectly. Slightly off center, but I mean, if anything, it means I have room to sort of sit the relay once I run the wires to it. But yeah, happy days. So I'm gonna buzz up the bolts holding the fuel tank in so it doesn't fall out while I'm driving. And yeah, happy days from there. The next job I will be fooling around with the wires on here and fitting in some thicker ones. So if we have a look at the fuel pump hanger assembly, you've got rivets here and here. This is the earth, of course, because it's earthed out to the metal part of the casing hanger. And it's just a little steel rivet, it looks like. So I'm probably going to replace these with rivets, and when I do that, I'm going to be upgrading the size of the ring connector so that I can run bigger, thicker wires, because you can see, if I had to guess, I'd say that's 10 amp wire, and then the actual fuel pump's wire itself is 15 amp, which is where my problems have stemmed from. But yeah, coming to the top of the fuel pump cover, you can see this, I've ground open this little plastic cover. This is a little insulating cover that looks like another rivet, but I'm gonna again drill it out, because this is the positive electrode here, and you can see it's shielded from earthing out to the body here with this plastic. So yeah, I don't know if I'll be able to drill that one out, but I'll give it a go. Okay, so we got the earth drilled out. It came out real nice. And then this top one, I drilled out the bottom part, the in-tank part first. It came out with put up a bit of a fight, but when I drilled out the top one, it looks like it's just this little brass piece, and then it's got the top part brazed onto it. But that's good for me, so what I'm going to do now is I can get rid of this signal wire here, and then I can run a wire straight down that, and what that'll mean is yeah, I can avoid having that extra connection. But what I will do is I'll cake it in silicon, just to avoid any chance of like fumes and stuff coming back out. So this here is a relay set that I bought off eBay. It's got 30 amp fuse, the relay itself, and then it's got some big 30 amp wire that's already made into the colours that you need. And just look at this, the big 30 amp wire just slots straight down through that hole with nearly no play, and it's the perfect length to connect to the Walbro positive wire. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to cake it in silicon around here, and that'll mean I can slide this down, bolt it up, and yeah, it'll just have the relay sitting at the top. So if there's any chance of this one shitting out on me, yeah, I can just swap it out real easy. Oh, look at that. I can probably even rob one of the bolt holes for it. Okay, so the earth is connected. I've solder sealed both of them and put some heat shrink over them, as well as done the old brass crimps because I love them and think they're awesome. But yeah, got the 12 volt power coming to the top here, and got the earth wired in. So I'm going to drop this down into the tank now, do all the bolts up, and connect the hoses, and then I'll start fooling around and hopefully get the fuel pump running tonight. So I've got my relay in, which has the solid wire from the battery coming to this little one here, which then runs into the pump, or down into the pump hanger assembly. I've got the feed and the return all hooked up nice and tight with some hose clamps, and then yeah, I've got the trigger coming off the original wiring loom. So I've got the battery back in, and I've got the key here, so if I prime it, you'll hear it. So everything should be all good. So what I'm going to what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lower the car back down. I'm going to pack a bunch of tools in the back. I'm not going to put the back seat in, I'll do that after. But what I'll do is I'll prime the pump a few times, make sure it's building the right pressure on the regulator on the fuel pressure side of the rail. And then once I've verified it's building the right pressure, I'll give it a few hits, make sure there's no leaks coming from the pipes all the way to the front. You've got to work back in a consecutive series to what you've been working on. And then I'll start it, let it idle, make sure there's no leaks again, make sure my fuel pressure's set right, make sure, yeah, everything's all good. Then I'll reverse it out, go to the servo, get some fuel, and then go for a bit of a drive. What I will be doing, I'll be putting any tools I need in the back, but I'll also be screwing down this plate and putting a bit of insulation down just because. I was going to put a bit more footage on this video, but I didn't get a chance to film it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Like and subscribe if you like what you see here. I've got a bit of content coming out on the Patrol. I've just bought a new manifold with a T25 flange, so we'll be going for a new turbo on that one soon. As well as that, I'm fooling around with a mechanical boost controller that I'm designing for the Patrol. So again, a video for that. And I promise that at 500 subscribers, I'll do a massive burnout and film it for the first time. So yeah, that's it. I hope everyone's well, and I'll see you all next time.